I guess what I'm trying to understand by with what you're saying, I understand the premise that these elites have now become globalists. You know, they're not looking to just control America; they want to control the entire world, and I think that's pretty apparent. Lots of us are awake to that.
Yeah,
What I guess I'm trying to understand is what I'm trying to understand is how the how BRICS. So it almost sounds like you're saying, okay, BRICS would be good theoretically because people would like to have an alternative. The world would like an alternative than just the US dollar, which is what it's backed by. But then it sounds like what you're concluding is, but BRICS is going to end up being just another CBDC controlled currency, just like when they when they make this other Western CBDC, because they're going to have both, right? They're not going to be, because the West's not going to adopt BRICS. So they'd have to have like a changing of the currency in the Western world. Plus, there would be BRICS, but then it sounds like what you're concluding is, but they'll merge and they're all going to be one and the same, and then the globalists will have
yeah,
complete
yeah,
control.
exactly. And from their viewpoint, that's necessary in order to dethrone the dollar while staying in charge and controlling this new world currency system. Now, from our viewpoint, the important takeaway is we need to stop and prevent the introduction of central bank digital currencies everywhere. That's a very important baseline. It's a control tool of proportions, totalitarian proportions that are unimaginable, and that no country, government, or authority, bureaucracy should, central banks, whatever, should be able to have in their hands to control people, because it unifies the monetary powers with the fiscal powers and, in fact, micromanaging transaction powers, all transactions. It's not just about surveillance of everything you're doing and buying and where you are and who's doing what, but also the ability, the programmability. They're going to use AI to control us. That's the main purpose of AI. Because when you have a small elite and you've got billions of people, they need the tools. That's when they came up with, okay, we need the right computing power so we can control, 8 billion people.
Yeah.
And so that's all this investment in AI is about, that really, as the motivation. There may be some positive side effects, but that certainly has been the motivation. So the CBDCs will be linked to essentially algorithms that then can enforce and can be manipulate at short notice whatever they want to do with us. Because once you're in that grid, then you're in the digital control grid and freedom is gone. That's why we have to prevent it. And in every country in the world, we have to argue against this. In the BRICS countries, in the US vassal states, in America, we have to consistently insist, no, this is not against a democratic open society, and we don't want this. And also we need to work against the centralization in the financial system that they're pushing very hard to accelerate by central banks forcing bank mergers and the number of banks going down. So we need to continue to establish new banks. I'm working on that. In the UK, is setting up a local bank, community bank, but also in Europe, continental Europe, getting investors to buy independent, small local banks, increasing their capital so they can survive on their own. Because money is created by banks, you see. So the more banks we have, the better for everyone, and the more decentralized the system will stay. Their plan is to centralize everything, reduce the number of banks. And so I'm working hard to increase it by creating small banks, local banks, which is quite a powerful tool also for wealth creation, because banks create money, they create the money supply. So there's things we can do to work against their agenda, but I see this, the centralization aspect now moving globally. And as you say, we've seen this particularly since 2020, when the degree of coordination of ridiculous policies it's been astonishing. The fine
Yeah.
tuning already of ridiculous policies, and yet all the countries had the same set of ridiculous policies.
Wow. So, because a lot of people have been championing BRICS, thinking, okay, this is going to finally reduce US influence. This is finally going to, for many of us Americans, we feel like, wow, okay, finally, maybe we'll get our sovereignty back from the deep state that has been controlling and the rogue deep state that is doing a bunch of stuff in our name, killing people, toppling governments. That's kind of been sort of the thinking that, well, maybe that'll be a good thing. But I see what you're saying of how no, it's so as long as it's a centralized and in particular digitized currency, it's not good no matter whether it be controlled by the dollar or whatever other currency they try to throw under it. People
Yes,
need
exactly.
so
Now, of
so are
course,
you yeah, go ahead.
of course, I do also still think it is an opportunity, to have this movement of countries that are not U.S. vassal states, and they are becoming sensible about certain policies, international financial policies, and they're helping also a lot of developing countries with alternative policies to the IMF World Bank system, which was actually designed
Right.
to prevent development and exploit these countries by forcing them to continue to export raw materials, focusing on that, and you can never develop that way, become essentially neo-colonial exploitation structures where the poor countries just focus on exporting raw materials. Their terms of trade constantly deteriorate. The currency weakens. They get, despite all their efforts to export the commodities, current account deficits. They have to borrow from abroad. The debt trap. The currency weakens further. The debt is in foreign currency. They can never get out of it. That was the mechanism. And in the BRICS country group, they have some policies that give alternatives to this. They're not yet going full, the full-blown alternative way. I mean, I'm working on formulating these policies to help them, but at the moment, it's already better than the IMF World Bank system. I mean, for a full-blown alternative, we shouldn't just say, "Oh wow, China is so rich; they've got so much money." Okay, well, we'll take money from China, and also they're not so, strict about this conditionality and changing the country structure as the IMF World Bank have been doing. Okay, so it's already an improvement, but better
Mhm.
than that surely is to say, "Oh, hang on, why is China so powerful? Why does China have so much money? They can throw around the money. Well, why don't we figure out what China did? Because they didn't do this with foreign money. Why don't we figure out what Japan did, high growth
Mhm.
economies, how Korea did it, Singapore did it. Foreign money is just, is a sideshow. And we then implement, any developing country can implement the same successful high growth policies. And that gives you true independence, and that is possible. So we can still improve on what's currently being debated in among the BRICS countries. It's an improvement on the IMF and World Bank, but that's a low standard because there was pretty
Yeah.
bad policy.
Right. Right.
But we can do even better. So there's still much work to do, but I do think it is an exciting opportunity. We just need to seize that opportunity, make sure it's not going to be totally monopolized by deep state actors that will then, as they I'm sure would like to, um, turn that into just another feeding mechanism for some global CBDC.
Yeah. So you're a big advocate. It sounds like you're a big advocate of each country maintaining their currency, their own
Yes,
individual currency,
absolutely.
instead of this. All the European countries have gone now to the euro, and that was the some
Yes,
of them didn't, like the Brits never did. They said no, that's a bad idea. That was smart of them actually to never give up their
exactly,
pound. Same thing with some of the
exactly.
Scandinavian countries.
That's
Are
right.
they in the EU? But they kept their
Yes, they are. I
krona
mean,
and whatnot. Yeah,
Sweden and Denmark are in the EU, but they
yeah,
kept their currency. Also, some Eastern European countries, many kept their currencies. Poland, Hungary. Um, you've got Romania and Bulgaria. They have their own currencies, but they're in a currency board where they already give up some degree of control. It's a fixed exchange rate system, essentially. But still, they have their own currencies, and that's better than giving up your currency. Because what's the alternative? Actually, now the eurozone countries, they all use a foreign currency. The euro is a
yeah.
foreign currency for all of them. It's
Right.
crazy, actually, to think that,
Yeah.
oh, we should all adopt a foreign currency controlled by what? An international organization. The ECB is outside the law, above the law, outside any of the European countries legally. There's nothing any public prosecutor of the highest level could do if there's some very bad deeds found. None of them can ever get prosecuted. They can't ever enter the premises to, impound computers or get files. None of that is possible. It's crazy.
Mhm.
There's just no accountability. The ECB is the most powerful, unaccountable central bank in history. As it turns out, it was actually the revived Reichsbank, the central bank before the Bundesbank, that led to and supported the rise of Adolf Hitler. That
Mm.
central bank was also so powerful and totally unaccountable to any German institution. It was only accountable to the reparations committee run by JP Morgan.
Mm.
And that was a disaster. But the ECB was modeled on that disastrous central bank, the Reichsbank, which I actually describe in my book, Princes of the Yen. There's a whole chapter explaining that. And I predicted in that book already before it happened that the ECB was going to use that excessive power to create bank credit driven asset bubbles in Ireland, Portugal, Spain, and Greece, as it turns out. Banking crises follow immediately after these asset bubbles, and then big recessions, large scale unemployment. And of course, they've done that initially in the periphery countries. It's now Germany's turn. So we're going to hear in the next 2-3 years more bad news on Germany. It's the big focus now for the big squeeze. The economy is already going down. They created a property bubble from 2009, peaking in November 2022. It's now going down and will continue to go down and down and down every year. And that will take the banking system with it, unless they take the right policies that are formulated. But I suspect the ECB wanted this, so it will then use the banking crisis in 2-3 years' time to merge all the banks into one, massively concentrate the financial system, and then launch the CBDC. That's probably sort of the broad brushed game plan. But it's not written in stone, and I think it depends on all of us what we're doing. And I think we have to stand up for decentralization. We want local banks, local money creation. Because with local banks, you can also introduce, when you have to, when they introduce CBDCs, for example, you could launch local currencies, gold-based currencies, alternative mechanisms. You can use them as a ramp for crypto. All possibilities exist. But if you don't have that and you're just dependent on the central bank, I mean, it's like in the Soviet Union. Like, that's why they love this model, CBDC model, because in the Soviet Union, there was only one bank, the central bank.
Mm-hmm.
It's what central planners love. And of course, central bankers are central planners, and Brussels is the ultimate central planning authority. So they love this idea of CBDCs, which means the central bank competing against the supervised banks, and it will quickly compete them away, because it's like the umpire in a game saying, I'm going to join the game, and I'm going to use the red card and the whistle, and suddenly who's going to be left in the game? Only the umpire, and the umpire, of course,
Right.
wins. You drive the banks
Right.
out of business, you get total concentration, centralization. That's what we have to stop on every
Yeah.
level.
Hey guys, this was just a clip of a longer show. Catch the full show by going to KimIversonShow.com. It is free. It airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. You could go back now and watch this full interview. I highly recommend it. Again, go to KimIversonShow.com. Thank you so much for watching.